Mr. Goodman, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Mr. Hudson?
Doing great.
There's been so much activity this morning. I'm sure there's a lot for us to discuss.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh my, it's amazing. A person has to ask themselves, or it has to cross their mind, what are we exactly up against? You know.
Yeah.
So one of the things I thought that I might clear up, Jason, is that we have the Hudson Report, Deep Hudson, Deep Uranium, and I thought I would just clear that up just briefly. And that is what we have. And I was hoping that George wasn't going to say some things, but I don't want to get your crowdsource the truth audience confused.
Yeah.
And so what we have is I'm the point man for groups, we'll put it that way in plural, groups of individuals who come out of the intelligence community and who specialize in various aspects of the community. So what exactly does that mean? Well, for example, I'm not going to identify the alphabet soup agencies, or I'm not going to do that. It would be unfair to them, and nor am I going to identify male, female, or otherwise. But what we have is, as an example, you take, for example, an individual that has worked in the Central Intelligence Agency, and there's all kinds of aspects to it, with all kinds of different disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
You have field agents, you have field operators, you have intelligence gatherers, electronic intel, you have human intel. And so you have all of these disciplines. You'll have people walking around that are psychologists, psychiatrists, and you'll have individuals that are experts at international law. You'll have individuals who have a doctoral degree as a sociologist. And the list goes on, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But people don't realize that when somebody says intelligence community, oftentimes people get confused only because they haven't been adequately informed as what is that.
Right.
And in the world of intelligence, if a person really thinks about it, and people that are in the know, that can include an individual who was a homicide detective for 26 years. Now, someone may say, well, what would he know? You'd be surprised what he knows because he's been on the streets.
Right.
Especially if he came out of Chicago or St. Louis or Los Angeles or whatever city that he worked in.
Mm-hmm.
He is an expert on that city, if you think about it.
Sure, of course.
And so then you have your FBI agents. And then there's again, various disciplines, educational disciplines with those agents. You have forensic specialists who specialize in determining the validity of documents and signatures, and you have individuals that are experts at finances, and people that are experts in language, and the list just is almost endless.
Mm-hmm.
And so, without going into all the different alphabet soup agencies, which is impossible anyway, because there are many, many, many of them. People don't realize that either.
More than 17?
Oh yeah, yeah. You open up a can of Campbell's alphabet soup and start playing with the letters, and you're not going to figure out all of the. You've got agencies that are known, and you've got agencies that you've never heard of.
Well, right. We just found out about the Coast Guard Intelligence Agency, which I certainly had never heard of.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep, and then you have the Naval Intelligence Agency, and then you have the Naval Investigative Service. You have the Criminal Investigation Division of U.S. Army. then you have Army intelligence, and then on top of that, you've got the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Mm-hmm.
So if people really knew how big the intelligence alphabet soup really was, they would be amazed.
Right.
So the individuals that have come together, many of them have their own little groups. I just happen to know them, have worked with them, have had an opportunity in the past. I won't go into details there either, but I know of them, and they in most cases were already working on things. They may be retired, some may be active, some may be on contract. And so what we have these groups that have been specializing in something. For example, and I will not divulge the number of people in the groups.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a group called the Marianas Group. Well, that's the deep dark web. We have a group that George has often referred to, the Deep Uranium Group, or the Uranium Group.
Right.
He called it the Uranium 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, they have been involved in whatever number that is, but they have been involved in looking at studying radioactive material, how it's, what governments do with it, what private corporations do with it. Quite frankly, the reason they did that is because they were and are concerned, not only for themselves and their own families, but for the families of Americans. Is this material being handled properly? Is it being stored properly? Is it truly being guarded? Is there some kind of underhanded activity taking place?
Right.
And so that's why they did that.
Right.
We have the Washington Boys. Very familiar with Washington. Know it. They know that area and the offices and the buildings in that area. They could sit down and with a blank piece of paper and put a very detailed map together. They have a lot of contacts, not only in government and in the House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, but they also have contacts with investigative journalists that work for other, news sources.
Right. Of course.
And more. They also know business people, etc. They know. I think one of the best people to know would be your lobbyists. These guys know the lobbyists, and that's where the real deals are cooked. Behind closed doors with a smoke-filled room, right?
Right.
So what they do is they keep their ear planted to the ground and to the walls of Washington, and listen, for the whispers. I like to say that because the real information that comes out of Washington is whispered. It's not yelled. You hear somebody yelling about something. You're lucky if you're getting a couple. You're getting what they want you to hear.
Right.
That way.
Right.
So that's what we've assembled, and they help others, and obviously they have committed themselves to helping crowdsource the truth and George Webb. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully that clears that up, and hopefully that's enough information for people to feel, feel like they have a better understanding. But these individuals come from, various walks, everything from special operations, Green Beret, you name it, and that's what they come out of. So,
well, I think after hearing our previous phone call and hearing your experience and just the way that everyone always asks me this because, I've spoken about you in the past, and they say, well, how do you know that he's credible? I mean, how do you know that anyone is credible? I listen to the things that you tell me and the manner in which you speak, and I make a judgment, and I think almost everyone, no one at all, is doubting you anymore because you do speak from experience, and what you say carries a lot of weight.
It's okay if they do. It's okay if they do question, and they should. Whether it's me, whether it's our organizations, the various ones, whether it's anybody, they should always be questioning. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is, and what we even use, and I've taught you, is the trust meter concept. Mm-hmm. And obviously pure evil is 0 and God Almighty is 10. So everything else falls between there, between 1 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
And it fluctuates because of the human condition, right?
Yeah.
And so one day, a dear friend of yours that you may have gone to school with since grade school, you might have that individual on your trust meter sitting at an 8 or a 9, but then all of a sudden,
yeah,
he or she does something that, you know, that is revealing and just, you know, broke the trust. And then if you're smart, you're going to move them down on the trust meter. Does it mean that you don't associate with them or like them or still care and love them? No, it shouldn't. But it should give you some wisdom as to how you might want to deal with them in the future, right?
Yep.
And same way with a wife or husband. I mean, you'd be surprised how many I'll call them students. How many students we had where we said, you know, can you trust your wife at a 9? And you would think they could, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you would think. I'm not going to go any further there because you consider the number of divorces today
right.
and all that.
Right.
And you know, and it's not just women; it's the men too. Let's face it. We have a society that has lost its moral and ethical compass, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just thought I would clear that up.
Well, I appreciate
and people
that.
Should question. People should question, and the bottom line is: does the information hold water or not? Is it true or is it not true?
Right.
And I'll ask you, if you had to lay a percentage on the information that we have been able to provide you and George, what is our batting average?
It's very high, I think, certainly, 60, 70% or more, but obviously you're dealing with a lot of variables, so sometimes, it's hard to say. And there's been a ton of things. Part of the reason why, and I really appreciate you doing it, that you've agreed to do these phone calls, is that beyond the accuracy of your information is my ability to accurately convey it to the crowdsourced community. So we wanted to increase that percentage by having you speak for those groups firsthand rather than having it filter through me or George or some other mechanism.
Right. Right, and we discussed that for that reason, and that's why they decided that they asked me to be the point man. Mm-hmm. We actually keep track of, you're going to love it, we are anal people. I don't mind telling you. If the crowdsourced the truth audience is wondering, what is a spy operator, special operations person like? We are very meticulous and anal people. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that we don't take chances, and it doesn't mean, depending on the activities that you're performing, we don't mind jumping out of a plane, and we don't mind hanging off a cliff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But everything we do, what people don't understand is we are not thrill seekers. We get a thrill out of what we do or what we did.
Right.
But everything we do is a calculated risk.
Right.
With an immense amount of training. So what one person might say, oh my God, look at that guy's got a lot of guts. No, he has a lot of training. Mm-hmm. And he knows before he takes that next handhold that it's going to hold. Mm-hmm. So if he puts a bullet down range, he's calm when he does it, regardless of the bullets flying past him. His heart rate is still not pumping at 200 beats a minute.
Right.
So every bullet he puts down range, a real operator, he's calm when he pulls the trigger, and he knows where that bullet is going to go. So there's a big difference, and that's a very difficult thing to train people, is how to be in a situation like that when the adrenaline is pumping and you don't become overcome with emotion, and you're able to do what you need to do and what you were trained to do with logic and precision.
Right.
That's a big difference. That's the agent operator, however you want to look at it. That's the one who survives, is the one who's in control, mm-hmm. versus the one who doesn't. But we'll actually keep track of the information that we provide and have provided, and we're actually hitting over 86% right now.
Wow.
And we've been wrong a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
We thought we were wrong a couple times, which then later, at a later date, proved to be correct. And the rest of it is not that we've been wrong; it just hasn't proven itself yet.
Mm-hmm.
So we are. If you were looking at us as up for bat in a major league, we have one hell of a batting record right now.
Yeah.
And we do that on purpose, because the last thing that we want to do is what we won't do is provide false information.
Right.
We're not going to lie about the information we give. We're not doing any justice to you or to George or to the audience. There's no need for it. And my God, we're surrounded by it anyway. All you have to do is look at really just about any of your media today,
Mm-hmm.
which are nothing but propaganda. In a nice way of putting it, they're propaganda machines. But in reality, they are malicious, blatant liars, is what they are.
Yeah.
So that's not us.
That's the fake news.
Yeah, and besides that, if you think in terms of manpower and hours spent, and let's say, for example, that you and George are on a hot trail, the last thing you need is to be given information that causes you to go in a direction or to come to a conclusion or a suspicion of something that isn't true.
Right.
What good would that be?
Yeah, that was the opposite of good.
Not a good idea.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to clear that up.
Well, I think it helps people to understand, how we work with you and what your purpose is, and how what we're doing differs from, it's not just a news channel made for, super low budget on somebody's computer. It's about trying to take a different approach to getting at what the truth actually is.
Well, and that's what we need, is it not?
I think so.
We need. I mean, our country is not going to survive based on lies. So there's just been enough of that. There's just lying. There is lying everywhere. Everywhere.
You've spoken about like chatter and things, and people have heard that term where there's just like activity. And George, talks about metadata and stuff. Well, I mean, I can tell you this morning, my phone was going off. I was getting calls from you. I was getting calls from Charles Ortel. And I was like, wow, something is really going on. And of course, last night, Julian Assange was tweeting that Ed Batowski phone recording of Rod Wheeler. Of course, and Dana Rohrabacher met with Julian Assange, and said that there's some bombshell there from Assange relative to hacking or Seth Rich, DNC, who knows what. But there's a lot of activity happening right now, so I always feel like you are several days ahead. As a matter of fact, it was yesterday that you told me that Podesta was in Norway meeting with high-level government officials in a manner to subvert Trump's climate policy. And of course, we know there was that big pedophilia bust that included a lot of politicians and government leaders in Norway. So I don't necessarily know how to evaluate all of this information, but I like it that we now have this mechanism where we can sort of lay everything out in these calls and just push it out there for thousands and thousands of people to listen to. And as the community grows, maybe this will be a new method that people can use to literally crowdsource their own news.
Well, if you think back 2-3 weeks ago or whatever, we had a serious interest in Podesta's activities when he supposedly went on vacation with his family.
Mm-hmm.
What we suspected was that he was actually traveling and moving money.
Right.
And then we were able to locate where some of this wealth is most likely located, which was in these vaults that could be rented by individuals, companies, the super rich, and they rent these vaults. They're climate controlled, and they're off the books because they're not rented they're not considered a banking mechanism. They're considered an elaborate storage unit.
Right.
So we were able to get a confirmation on that, if you recall. And then, of course, we gave that to you and George for your investigation. We said, look, this is what we found, and this is how you could move wealth around and keep it hidden.
Yep.
Well, as a result of that, we've kept an eye on Mr. Podesta, and we found out days before he went to Norway that he was going to go for this meeting with various business leaders, and that he was not only going to be a guest speaker, but he was going to be one of the key speakers.
Yeah.
And so, that's what we try to do. Now, what were the backroom agreements, et cetera, that go along with that? I don't know. We don't know. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge puzzle, and you have to start putting those pieces. When you find a piece, you just simply have to try to find where it fits, and you have to put it there.
Right.
Sometimes you'll find where that piece goes, but it's not exact. But that piece, picture, a photograph, you can see, 50% of it is clear, but then there's this fog bank that is hiding part of the lake and the hillside behind it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you get this piece of the puzzle that fits, but it's part of the fog bank. So it's going to take time to get that clarity.
Right.
That's the world of intelligence, and people need to understand that. One thing that we do and have done is we say, hey, we surmise, we suspect, we have strong reason to believe.
Right.
Here's why. These other pieces say, we know that these other pieces show this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it would indicate, and then we even, to be honest about it, the Marianas group has an algorithm. These guys are amazing people.
Mm-hmm.
They put an algorithm together to determine a percentage of accuracy. We suspect this. What is our percentage there of what we suspect? And they'll come back to me and say, hey, we're giving this a 67% accuracy rating, or a 42%, or whatever. So on the trust meter for accuracy of the information, and that's why oftentimes when I send you a report, it'll say we consider this information to be a 2 or a 4 or a 8 or
right.
a 6, the trust on the meter.
Right.
And then if that changes, then we try to keep up on it. We change it, and we'll say, hey, by the way, this information is now confirmed, and it has moved from a 4 to a 6 or a 7.
Yeah. I've been trying to follow your guidelines in reporting things and characterizing them and phrasing them more accurately to not make them definitive statements.
Yeah, it's okay to make a definitive statement if the information is definitive, right?
Right.
It's and that's just the way it has to be. And honestly, in the world of law, if you really want to break it down, which is amazing to me how CNN hasn't been sued out of existence. Watching, seriously, I think people should be suing. I think they should be.
Well, George is doing that now.
Lawsuits all the time. I just wish it was more than that, more than just George. Seriously, I almost believe that if you could find a law firm in the United States willing to go after them, they could file a class action lawsuit representing every American.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
For lying. Well,
And,
Lee Stranahan is talking about joining Alex Jones and Diamond and Silk and a bunch of other people and doing a class action suit against YouTube. So maybe something like that is coming.
I think it's going to have to be honest with you. But anyway, we collect information, and then that information and what we see and what we come across, then that begins to raise red flags with us.
Mm-hmm.
And take for example McMaster. We heard from the Washington boys that McMaster brought a woman into the White House to meet President Trump who turned out to have ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. And this woman's name is Dina Habib Powell.
Oh, yes, of course.
And she is referred to by many people in Washington, which is amazing to me to be. I mean, we've gotten this from several people. Oh, yeah, that's the Republican Huma Abedin. Oh, my God, you don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But we've had several people tell us that, in their opinion, that she is absolutely a female jihad. And I misspoke. I said McMaster. It was McMaster and Dina Habib Powell brought this woman in, and the woman's name was Aya Hijazi. I apologize for that.
That's all right.
And see, that's the other thing. When we get something wrong, it's better just to say, hey, I misspoke, and let me correct that right away.
Right.
So what we heard was McMaster and a woman by the name of Dina Habib Powell brought this woman into the White House, into the Oval Office, and her name is Aya Hijazi. And she went in there to meet President Trump, and he had no idea anything about her background. So we sent this information to you, and we said, hey, we didn't give this much. We weren't sure of it. And then we came back to you, and we said, by the way, this has legs.
Yeah.
When we started hearing it from multiple sources, we felt confident to say, hey, you might want to look into this. You might want to store this information because it appears to have legs.
Right.
And it moved from like a 2 to a 6.
So what's interesting, Mr. Hudson, is that now, instead of you speaking to me, and again, me being this bottleneck, we record these calls, we put them out there, and now, if Lee Stranahan is listening, I know Lee sometimes is a guest on our show, of course, and he's done a lot of reporting on Dina Powell and what she's been up to. So this sort of, again, with the whole crowdsource the truth model, this makes you almost an open source information spigot for any journalist that wants to follow up on these things, because I can't vet every single thing. Me, George, and Trish, we're just 3 people, and of course we've got Joe, we've got Panama Mike, we've got Queen Tut, we've got all these different people that are coming in and helping us, many, many more that I can't even list. But now it can expand to the thousands, and that's where the real power of this is going to really take hold.
Mm-hmm. I'll bet one of the things that people are wondering about in your audience is Charlottesville, Virginia, the incident that has taken place there and what's going on.
Yeah, we're going to focus on that this Friday, tomorrow.
Well, let me. Do you want me to give you some information that what we've discovered in regards to Charlottesville?
Please.
Today, or would you prefer that I do that tomorrow?
Well, I think if you give it today, then people can be looking at it, and then, including Pat Militek and Jeffrey Wilson, who will be joining us, they can look at this recording or look at this video. They can look at this video and listen to this recording and have that information when we go into the conversation.
Okay. Well, a lot of times in the world of intelligence, what you end up with is a lot of questions. And it doesn't mean that the information isn't valid, but what it does is we call it raising red flags. Mm-hmm. And so in my world, when I look out at the information we have, with all the red flags that popped up, it's almost like I'm in Russia at a May Day.
Yeah.
The May Day celebration.
Right.
It's just red everywhere. But the thing that concerns us is we keep asking ourselves, just what is it that we're fighting against? And I would imagine that your audience probably wonders the same thing. And of course, it's been identified as we've got the New World Order, and then we've got these individuals that are operating within the New World Order, obviously, that hold various positions and various importance. Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. We're going back to that puzzle again. But what has us amazed by this and what took place in Charlottesville, Virginia, and what is about to take place? Because we see a powder keg. We see the United States as a powder keg, and we think that this type of activity and destruction of property and the attempt to destroy history of the United States is going to occur even more prevalently when the colleges reconvene with their students.
See, it's funny because that aligns with something that was also told to me by someone else.
But what we have to ask ourselves is, a lot of the crowdsource the truth audience is sitting there saying, well, my son and daughter is going to such and such college here in another week.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that my son and daughter aren't going to participate in that. In some cases, they may say, well, my son and daughter are participating, but not in a negative light, but not necessarily in a negative way.
Right.
And but you have to ask yourself, how do these groups, if you start analyzing the groups, who organized them? Are they a 501c3, tax exempt? What are they? And so you begin to dissect. And something that we have found that is very disturbing is that many of these groups are literally being funded. I don't care if they want to call it donations or what, but they are being organized. They are being funded by George Soros.
I mean, I can't believe you just said that, because that also aligns with the information from the other person I was speaking to. I mean, I can believe you've said it because we've all heard it, but I think this is what I'm getting at. See, Mr. Hudson, I'm so much more interested, rather than breaking the news that there's been a riot in Charlottesville and people were hit by a car and announcing that like the day it happens or 5 minutes after it happens. I'm much more interested in speaking to you and the other people that we know and the members of the crowdsourced community who are gathering all the information on it and figuring it out so we can move forward, cautiously, rather than rushing right out and saying, hey, this is what happened.
Well, here's what happened. We just happened to have somebody in the Virginia area that took it upon themselves to go talk to some people. Because if you're going to find out information, truly, if you're going to get good intelligence, good information, you have to go to the source. You have to go to the area and speak to the people that were there, either participants or not, to find out what happened.
Right.
And we have and we feel pretty confident right now that we have a good idea what happened. So quickly, I'll just tell you how this all went. There were various groups that were not Nazis. I'm going to clear this up right now. They were not Nazis. There were Nazis there. I'm going to get to that. So if you're in the audience, don't get upset yet. Okay? Right. There's no reason to. There were people who consider themselves to be patriots, and they were upset that there is a threat of taking down these statues of Civil War figures that represents the history of our nation. Does not represent slavery. It represents our history. To be quite honest about it, if people had the proper education, they would realize that the Civil War was not fought over slavery. It was fought over state sovereignty and economics. Slavery was just a great thing to pull everybody together. And I'm not going to go into a big spiel on this, but the bottom line is there has been slavery dating all the way back thousands of years, all the way to the Egyptians. And then when Irish immigrants came to the United States and they became indentured servants, that was just another name, a nice way of saying slavery. Bottom line.
Right.
I didn't do it. You didn't do it. In my own family, I had a colonel who was with the Confederate Army and was a cavalry officer. Do I hold it against him for fighting for what he believed in? No. Do I agree with slavery? No, I don't. Would I have a slave? No, I wouldn't. But I sure as hell wouldn't tear down his statue. So you have these individuals going in, and I'm going to point this out too. They were a kaleidoscope of humanity. There were white people, there were black people, there were Spanish people, there were several different ethnic people represented in these groups who considered themselves patriots, who wanted to protest peacefully about the destruction of these statues and taking them down.
Mm-hmm.
The minute they applied for their permits in Charlottesville, Virginia, the word went out. Somebody leaked it and said, aha, we're going to have this situation. These people are coming here. What a great opportunity when you have a governor that is on your side and maybe some others that are on your side. It was a perfect opportunity for someone to set up a frame.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so then what happened is all of a sudden the neo-Nazis are informed. And so the neo-Nazis then get involved. And I don't mind telling the crowd right now that the neo-Nazis are a completely 100% infiltrated organization by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Period.
Yeah.
We know it. We've always known it. It's been going on for a long time. We know for a fact. And then you get supremacists. You have several white supremacist groups, just like you have several different types of neo-Nazi groups. And then the word went out to Black Lives Matter. And the word went out to various other organizations on the left. Now, I want the crowd truth audience to know something right now. And I can speak freely on this for all the people involved in various groups I represent.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like Nazis. We don't like white supremacists. There are problems there, obviously, and we are not in favor, and we denounce their platform. But at the same token, I am going to flat out tell you, we are also against the Antifa.
Right.
We are against Black Lives Matter because they are just as bad, just as bigoted as the white supremacists and the Nazis.
Right.
And what surprises us is nobody seems to recognize this, and nobody is speaking out about it. For example, Maxine Waters. There's a good example. She's a bigot.
You're breaking up a little bit there. You're breaking up a little bit, Mr. Hudson. You're saying Congresswoman Waters?
Yeah, she's a bigot. And so and several others. Do I have a problem with black people? I don't. Absolutely not. If you took a look at our groups that have been assembled, it'd be looking through a kaleidoscope of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone to say, oh, well, Hudson has probably put together an intelligence organization or groups that are all white. No, we're not. No, we aren't. So what happened was then these groups, all of a sudden on Craigslist and various other means, they start advertising for people to go to Charlottesville, Virginia, and they're willing to pay them.
Right.
Anywhere from $25 an hour to $1,500 a week and more, depending on the amount of disruption that they can cause. And I'm going to tell you right now, to you and your group and your people, it is also they get bonuses if they're able to, depending on the amount of damage they cause.
Right. Right. Now, of course, you saw our broadcast. You saw the broadcast the other day with Lee Stranahan, where he was talking about the Ukrainian nationalist organization and the blood and soil chants, and how it was almost as if they were a traveling play, that George Soros took his Orange Revolution from the streets of Kiev and brought them to the streets of the United States, and we're fully in the Purple Revolution here. It's just beginning.
Right. So now we've got the Ukrainian Nazis. I'm going to call it the way it is. We got the Ukrainian Nazis, blood and soil.
Right.
Also paid by who? George Soros.
Right.
So you've got the far right. If you want to call it the far right, I don't like that terminology. It's right and wrong as far as I'm concerned. But you've got the far right being paid by Soros. You've got the far left being paid by Soros. You have to then scratch your head and go, what the hell is going on here? What is he trying? Why would he support both sides? And the reason he would do that is because folks, you're not going to want to hear this, but it's because the real war is being fought against you. The real war that is being fought, the reason it's being fought is to undermine you.
You know, it's working. I've got friends on Facebook who've been sending me emails, even people who are, you know, sort of outside of the Crowdsource the Truth community, who are just, you know, friends of mine from before I started this, who are getting angry about this and saying, oh, you support Trump, he's a racist. It's like, hey, he's the president. I'm going to support him. Not blindly, of course, but I don't believe that what he's done is racist. He got on the stage at a press conference at Trump Tower the other day, and he discussed what you're talking about, that there's problems on both sides. Or seemingly.
This is very simple to understand. We have people that worked domestic terrorism. They're experts. The people that we have assembled, they are experts on domestic terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
And what George Soros has done by paying these people, he is guilty of committing and supporting and financing economic terrorism against this nation. The president, we are very disappointed, the president has not ordered the Attorney General Sessions to issue warrants.
For Mr. Soros?
Yes.
I kind of agree
Absolutely.
with that.
He's already wanted in several countries.
Mm-hmm.
He has an open warrant in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
We know people, as a matter of fact, that have considered going after him because there's a $2 million reward on him.
The bounty? Wow.
Yeah.
$2 million.
And so why is this man being allowed to get away with this? And then you've got to ask yourself a question: why are these individuals that are the ones that are tearing down the statues? Why are they being allowed to tear down the statues and none of them are being arrested? Why is that?
I don't know.
All of those individuals that have been doing that you've been watching on TV, that have been putting a strap or something around the statue, pulling it off of its pedestal and crashing to the ground, every one of those individuals should be in jail right now for the destruction of property.
Right.
That property belongs to us, the American people. It belongs to your audience.
Right.
And so, make a long story short here, so what happened was the police, Charlottesville police and the state police of Virginia, and the state police have a bigger hand in this than Charlottesville does, believe it or not. But you've got a governor that is complicit with Hillary Clinton. And so what they did was they set up these barricades. And the individuals who wanted to organize the protest, wanted to do it peacefully, they were forced. Even when they told the police, when they could even find them, they said, we don't want to go down this way, we're willing to walk away. They weren't allowed to.
Wow.
And so they were led into the slaughter of these individuals. They were forced to walk where they went, and they were forced to endure the baseball bats, the glass bottles, the battery acid, all the things that were thrown upon them and that they were hit with.
Mm-hmm.
The police did that. Why?
I don't know.
And then we have an individual by the name of Brennan N. Gilmore.
Mm-hmm.
Been a little bit of talk about him. And Brennan Gilmore just happened to be in Charlottesville that day. Just happened to be in a position where he could film the car going down, crashing. You believe these innocent protesters. I'm not advocating what happened. I'm not saying somebody should crash a car into these people.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that car crashed into were not innocent. They were actively involved.
Hmm.
And so Brennan Gilmore just happened to be there at the right time in the right place. And so we know that Mr. Gilmore has a background with the U.S. State Department, and he actually operated in Central Africa. And guess what his job was?
What?
Working with special operations groups and black bag operations that were being conducted in Central Africa.
So he's a CIA type guy, some kind of operative.
CIA, DIA, yeah. And he was working for Ambassador Lawrence Wohlers. And how do we know that? The group is going to say, well, how do you know that? Well, it's because I'm looking at, I've got it right here in my possession. It's coming out of the office of the Inspector General. And so this is an evaluation out of the Inspector General's office that identifies Mr. Gilmore. So now we know that, gee, this may have been a setup, possibly some kind of false flag operation. And then we have the helicopter crashing supposedly with 2 state troopers, and it was flying overhead and collecting video footage and intelligence, and it just happened to crash just a few minutes, just around the same time as the car going down into the crowd. How convenient! How convenient! It reminds me of the plane during 9/11 that crashed in Pennsylvania, and it hit the ground so hard that it disappeared, went right into the ground and disappeared.
Right.
Amazing. So, if you have any questions or anything, I'd be more than happy to help you out here. That's what I have for today. And I sent you some information on stolen cars, the criminal methodology of stolen cars.
Yep.
I sent that to you and George to show you how the Iwans might have been doing the stolen cars, and we have strong reason to believe that was part of their operation.
Have you been able to find anything about the Amtrak auto train? It seems like all of the evidence that we've been pursuing with Amtrak itself and with other investigators haven't really been able to link anything to the train, and they're giving us pretty good reasons why that would be less than desirable for the Iwans or other car theft rings to utilize. Just too much attention, too much policing, too much oversight and cost.
I know for a fact that there's articles, and Mr. Webb has these articles where there is, where these other investigative journalists looked at it and knew or claimed that these cars were going down on the auto train, and we're not going to dispute that. But in our opinion, we think there was a much better and easier way for the Iwan brothers to move cars to Pakistan and to Dubai, United Emirates. I outlined that in the report that we sent to you that actually shows the title. It says example of an actual criminal case given to us by the UAE Dubai Consumer Protection Office. That is from them, and it talks about these vehicles coming in to Pakistan and what goes on in Pakistan. And then the next section, we have an example of an actual criminal case that was given to us by the Pakistani police. So there's your metadata. But here's what we know is happening. Do we know the Iwan brothers are utilizing it? We can't say that 100%. We can't. We won't. But what we do know is that let's say, for example, a storm comes through Texas and floods, with a massive flood, and these vehicles get flooded, and end up with an amazing amount of water damage, even to the point of being submerged. Have you ever wondered where those cars go? Well, once those vehicles run through the insurance claims a situation where and the cars are paid off by the insurance companies. Those cars then go to dealers who specialize in taking these cars, buying them for pennies on the dollar from
salvage.
The insurance company.
Yeah.
Well, some of the vehicles are damaged to the point that all they're good for is maybe some parts, and other vehicles, believe it or not, can be maybe complete, go through a refurbishing program where the interior gets replaced and stuff. The problem is that those cars, when that happens, that has to be specified in the paperwork in the United States. Right. That it was flood damaged, et cetera, et cetera. Well, nobody wants to do that, and the insurance companies don't want to insure them. So what happens to all of these thousands of vehicles?
Don't know.
Well, in steps the Awans and others like them. They buy these vehicles literally for pennies on the dollar. They buy these vehicles, and then they prepare these vehicles to ship them to Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And they ship these hundreds, thousands, and thousands. And people are probably wondering, well, how many thousands would there be? Well, just one auction house for these vehicles had 2,500 vehicles on their lots. Just one.
Wow.
And as we began to look at it nationwide, actually not even nationwide, just from about Kansas east,
mm-hmm.
we were able to identify 134,000 vehicles. 134,000 that are considered total loss, paid off by the insurance companies, and that are now being purchased and shipped overseas. So what happens is that they buy these vehicles. Now, bear in mind, let's say, for example, that you buy this vehicle and it has extensive exterior damage on it. Well, if you're smart, then what you'll do is you're going to utilize that vehicle for parts. You're going to sell it. You're going to pull its transmission, its engine. You're going to clean them up, drain the oil, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to clean those up, the front axle. You're going to take all the parts off this vehicle other than the body, and you're going to sell those parts. But here's the beauty of it. Those parts, especially the engine block, guess what it has on it? It has a VIN number.
Right, of course.
And the vehicle on the dash, what does it have?
Also a VIN number.
It has a VIN number.
Yeah.
Well, what if you have a chop shop in the United States and you take that vehicle to the chop shop and they go ahead and chop it down, they pull the VIN number off the dash, and they grind off the VIN number on the engine block. Or they may even leave it on there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have another vehicle, and let's just say, for example, that this happens to be a 2014 Bentley or a 2014 Corvette or anything like that.
Right.
Now what you do is you tell your crew, your theft crew, you say, hey, go get me a 2016 Corvette.
Uh-huh.
And they run out and steal you a 2016 Corvette, and now you use the VIN number off of the one that's been trashed, that's been lost, that you have pulled, and all you're going to do is transfer the VIN number onto the stolen vehicle so that it's no longer stolen.
Wow. Let me ask you this, because, see, a lot of people are getting upset that they feel like I'm trying to debunk what George is saying, and that's not it at all. I'm just trying to run down facts, because if we have one person on one hand presenting what seems to be credible information, saying the cars are going on the auto train, and it does go from Lorton, Virginia to Sanford, Florida. There was an awful lot of activity of the Awan brothers in Lorton, Virginia, and you do have a lot of port activity in Florida. It makes sense from that standpoint.
Let me clear that up with your audience. It is never just one thing.
Right.
We are not discounting George's investigation nor yours in any way. We're simply
it's not
saying,
even a matter of, I'm not really conducting an investigation so much as I'm evaluating evidence from a crowdsourced process. I've been joining George on his investigation and helping him conduct his investigation, but I've been trying to refine the process by which the evidence is assessed so we can come to better conclusions. Because now we've got an Amtrak detective who says no way, and we've got George who says, well, this is what's happening. And I'm not trying to create a fight. I'm trying to have a debate between experts, whether it's, an independent private investigator who's experienced in car theft. The Amtrak guy obviously couldn't come on the show. But I'm trying to create a debate between credible people who have strong information so that we can vet each other's information and get to the best answer. It's really about the information that we're able to provide. The intelligence, even though it doesn't go against his train theory, it adds to
the methodologies that are being used to move these vehicles is what I'm getting at.
Right.
And so anyway, the vehicle ends up in Pakistan, and then the people there are so good that they can actually grind down the engine block number that's stamped on the engine block, and they can actually create a new one and put it on that engine block. This is hard to believe. And we spoke with, I mean, you know, the information out of Pakistan is very simple. Here's what they said. They're so good at it that in order for us to determine if that is not the original stamping on that engine block, we actually have to send it to a forensics lab to determine it. And so they have all kinds of methodologies where they can play with the VIN numbers, they can change them, and then they have individuals there in Pakistan that are expert forgers, and they forge the documents. Whatever documents need to be forged, they forge new documents. Now, once that vehicle leaves the United States, the only thing it needs is a green card attached to its windshield. And that green card is supplied through the auction house. So once that thing has its green card, nobody, even in customs, questions anything. They see the green card, vehicle gets loaded up, it gets shipped to Pakistan, and when it comes off that ship, same deal. Nobody questions it. It's already got a green card.
Right.
It's already got a green card taped to its windshield, and therefore it's good to go. It's not a stolen vehicle. If they do check, and they don't check all of them, they check sporadically, sort of like checking for depleted uranium.
Right.
What we come up with, 3 containers out of 10,000. The only way that they're going to know if that vehicle was stolen is if the VIN number has been registered with Interpol.
Right.
Well, that doesn't happen very often. So hopefully that clears that up a little bit and adds some extra information, and people can understand how easy it is for these people to be involved in car theft and how they can ship these vehicles and how and it's a real problem, because then a lot of these vehicles end up in Dubai, in United Arab Emirates. And I sent you some video where they're racing the vehicles in the sand dunes.
We played it.
Some of the, huh?
I played it during a broadcast.
Yeah, and some of those vehicles are very high-end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stolen vehicles.
Yeah.
Many of those vehicles that you see them out there trashing with these parties, those are stolen cars. So all I can say to your audience is, if your BMW was stolen and by chance it was taken by the Iwan, some Arab may, I'll be kind, may be racing your Beamer in the sand dunes outside of Dubai.
Right. Interesting to think about. Well, listen, Mr. Hudson, we've been on the phone for about an hour. I think I want to keep this to a length that people will be able to digest, because it's always so much information. It makes my head spin. But, you know, let's keep on top of all this stuff that's happening with George Soros and Charlottesville and, of course, the Iwan brothers. I think Imran's got a hearing coming up in 2 weeks, so there's going to be a lot happening. And definitely want to keep our eye on Robert Mueller's investigation. There was just that attorney that, or rather the FBI investigator who left the investigation, so that's certainly an interesting turn. Anything you can hear about that, I'd be very interested in hearing about, and I think the crowdsourced community would as well.
Absolutely. We're here to serve, and like I said before, it was an honor to serve before. It's an honor to serve now, and God bless you and your efforts. We're hoping to see you create, Jason, a new news network is what we're hoping to see. We are really hoping for that.
Well, I appreciate your input.
So with that, God bless you, everybody. Until next time, Hudson out.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Have a good day.